If you've decided to bypass an attorney and fill out your own immigration forms, take 15 minutes to go through this list of common mistakes people make when preparing their own immigration packages. Let's go. Number 1, not using the correct form. If you're not going to use an attorney, then it's on you to know what you're doing and what form you need. Sometimes the form is wrong not because it's not the correct form, but because the addition date is wrong. Let's say you decided a few months ago that you're going to apply for citizenship. You printed out the form, you're filling out the form, and then you kind of set it aside. And now it's 6 months later, and you say, okay, let me do this. And you go back and you continue the form. You have to double check on the on USCIS.gov to make sure that that form is correct. On the page where you find the form that you're going to download, it has all these different tabs, okay? Edition date, where to file, when to file, filing fees, a checklist of required initial evidence. So make sure you go through all these things. Look, you're not going to use an attorney, so you're going to save a fair amount of money. But that means you're going to pay for that in time. So make sure you do your due diligence, as we say. The second big mistake that people make is that they don't bother to read the instructions. They think they know. Maybe they've done, maybe you're doing an employment authorization document extension, and you did this once before. You know, it's not that hard. Tell you what, go through the instructions. They keep changing and updating the forms all the time, which means the instructions may be changing. So you have to stay on top of that stuff. Another big mistake is filing either too early or too late. An example of filing too early is you're trying to get your work permission. You filed for asylum. You want your work permission. You have to wait a certain period of time before you can apply for that. Filing for naturalization, but you don't want to have to take the civics and history course because you're getting up there in age. Well, you have to wait a certain period of time. You have to be a permanent resident for a certain period of time. You have to be of a certain age. So be careful not to file too early or too late. An example of too late is the DV lottery. Let's say you wanted to apply, somebody back home wants to apply for the DV lottery. They file it too late. Check it and double check it to see when you're eligible to apply for things. One. Another problem, skipping questions. Sometimes, I think this is usually done just as an oversight. You know, sometimes if you're doing the 45 and you have all those exclusion questions, you might miss a couple. Before you send it in, go back with a fine-tooth comb and make sure you have answered every question. Kind of coinciding with this is if you don't know the answer, don't guess. You don't know your mother's date of birth? Ask her. If she's not with us anymore, ask somebody who would know. Don't just presume that since your mother was born in Venezuela, your father was also born in Venezuela. He might have been born in Colombia. Who knows? You have to find out the correct answers. So don't guess at answers. And also connected to this is actually lying on the form. Okay? For instance, if you worked without permission, there's a question on the 485 that asks you if you did that. Don't lie about that. Oh, it's just a little white lie. No, it's a lie. It's a misrepresentation. Do not lie on the forms, particularly if you've had an arrest or a conviction. Sometimes I've had people say, well, I had an arrest and it was an ARD, first time offender program, and it got expunged, and I was told I don't have to, if somebody says, have you ever been convicted, you could say no, because it's been expunged, and that's the benefit of doing a first time offender program. You could tell that to anybody, to your friends, to your bosses. You can't tell that to the government. The question is, have you ever been convicted? Have you ever been arrested? They will have your fingerprints by the time of the interview. Don't lie about it because they're going to know. Better to mark yes, and then they'll ask you about that at the interview. Don't hide it. Speaking of hiding, this is not actually hiding, but it's something that people don't think about. Not mentioning all your children. Sometimes people, a lot of times, people will only tell me about the children who are here in the United States with them, or their minor children and not their adult children, or they don't mention their stepchildren, their spouse's children. You have to put them all down. They want that basic information about where they were born and date of birth and all that stuff. Now, this is kind of self-explanatory. Not signing the form. Not signing the form seems like a no-brainer, right? But it's kind of easy to overlook. So, listen, go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Be very, very careful. And when you're doing that signature, make sure you date it as well. Okay, it's not just your signature. They want to see a date on it. Sending in the wrong filing fee. Remember what I said at the very beginning? Check what the filing fee is supposed to be. One, it's right there on USCIS.gov. You're also not supposed to send in one check for both forms. Let's say you're doing a marriage case, I-130 and a 485. You should have two different checks. Don't combine those two checks. What I do is that I write the one check or the money order, attach it to the right-hand corner of the I-130. And then I do the same thing for the check for the 485, attach it to the right-hand corner so that there's no mistaking which check is for which form. Because you have to understand, forgetting to include a copy of your passport, marriage certificate, birth certificate. Again, check the instructions. What do you have to send them? Oh, and by the way, never, unless they specifically request originals, never send an original document. Make sure you send a photocopy of the document. This is especially true when we're talking about what you forgot to put in, especially true for marriage cases. You need evidence that you're living together. More than once, I've had, it's always a U.S. citizen, and it's almost always a female. They'll say, well, I said, what proof do you have that you're married, that you have a valid marriage? And she'll say, well, I have the marriage certificate. It's like, no, that proves that you literally stood up and said, I do. It doesn't mean that you're living together. They want proof that you're living together, like joint leases, right? They want proof that you're commingling money, bank accounts, doing your taxes together, having loans together. This becomes kind of a problem sometimes for people who are in their 40s, 50s. This is their second, possibly their third marriage. They don't want to commingle their money. You have your money, I have my money. At least get one joint bank account. Everybody, not everybody, each person puts, some money. I don't care if it's $100 a week or if it's their whole paycheck. They put money into the account. Both people put money into the account if both are working, and both take it out. You both have debit cards, right? Make sure both people are using that particular account. Okay, back to documents. Not translating your foreign language documents or only sending a copy of the translation. They need a copy of the original and the translation and the certificate of translation. I did a whole video. It came out on my very first day. I did this whole video on translating documents for USCIS. If you haven't watched it and you're going to be doing your own translating of documents, you should watch it. Passport photos. Sending in the wrong passport photos. They're too big, they're too small, they're outdated. You're supposed to send in photos that are no older than 60 days. They must be in color. They have to be taken against a white background. Listen, if you're going to go to like a CVS or a Rite Aid or someplace where they're going to take your little passport photos, bonus tip, don't go on a dreary day. Go on a bright sunny day. They're going to set you up against a white background, but there's no sun coming through those big windows that they have. It's just kind of dreary. And so what happens when you take the photos, it looks like the background's gray. It doesn't look white. I've had, not, the case wasn't returned because the photos were wrong, but I got an RFE because the photos were too dark. The background was too dark. So before you leave the Rite Aid, CVS, wherever you're getting your passport photos, take a look at that background. Make sure that that's a bright white background. No hats, no glasses. Oh, most importantly, no smiling. No smiling on those passport photos. They want a neutral expression. Just saying. Just Google photo instructions for USCIS and it'll pop right up. It'll tell you this whole big long list of stuff that it has to be, what size they have to be, and all these different things. It'll give you a whole rundown of the requirements. Make sure those photos are right. We only have a couple more things. Not keeping copies of everything you send to the government. What I always do, and I believe every immigration attorney does, and you should too, you write a cover letter. I'm not sure people nowadays even know what that is. That's a cover letter that says, "Dear Sir / Madam, enclosed please find," and then you do 1, Form I-130, immigrant visa petition. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. Have it all down on a list of what you're sending to them. Then you're going to sign that. So you're going to make a copy of that letter, and you're going to make a copy of everything that you're sending to them. Okay? Keep that copy in a file folder that you don't lose so that you know exactly what you sent to them. It's going to be very, very important down the road. Before you go in for the interview, you want to review that form. You want to see exactly, did I give them this? Did I give them that? You're going in for a marriage interview? What did I send to them as evidence that we're married? Did I send photos? Which photos did I send? You know, make sure you keep a copy for your own reference, okay? Mailing it to the wrong address. Again, just like I said in the beginning, go up on USCIS.gov, go to the form, and it will give you all those tabs about where to send things to. Where to send them, it depends on what you're sending. It can get a little complicated, but you're a smart person. I'm sure you can figure it out. Connected to that, my personal advice, use Federal Express. Don't use the post office. I wouldn't even use it as certified. Nope, I would not. If you don't want to spend that much money on Federal Express and there's not a rush for this, send it for 3 days, 3-day delivery. FedEx, generally speaking, does not lose stuff. USPS loses stuff. Trust me. I don't send anything to the government that's not sent by Federal Express. I just want, well, that's if I'm mailing it, okay? Now, for a lot of these forms, for most forms, at this point, you can do them online. So if you're comfortable doing it online, even better. But if you are mailing them, use Federal Express. And lastly, you need to update your address with USCIS within 10 days of moving, okay? That's not just because they want to keep tabs on you, want to know where you are. They want to know where to send your green card. They want to know where to send your employment authorization document that you requested. They also want to know where you are. And they're keeping tabs on you. But seriously, I have a client right now that he finally got cancellation of removal, and they're sending him his green card. That was 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Hasn't gotten the green card. Why? Never changed his address with USCIS. Every time he did his employment extension, which he did on his own, never changed his address. It's a problem. Now he's got to pay extra money to get a new card when he didn't even get the first one yet. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful for you. Please check and double check your stuff. Keep a copy of everything and read those instructions. Have a good day.